a good time to shred up the notepads at your table. Okay, cool. Okay, good morning, everyone. Welcome to day 3 of Zcon0. Thank you all for coming back and staying till the last day. I'm Andrew Miller. I'm one of the board members of the Zcash Foundation. I'm going to tell you all about the election that's on the screen here. You can see that, right? Yeah, okay. Let me do the morning announcements just to build suspense, I guess. So unlike the past 2 days of workshops, this afternoon is going to be freestyle, unconference style workshop. So that means around lunchtime you should be self-organizing to figure out what kind of groups you want to break into and chat about stuff. To facilitate that process, there's a sign-up sheet over there. So if you have ideas for a freestyle workshop or want to join or see what the other ones are there, you should go and scribble your name and ideas into that board over there. There's what?
There's a hallway one.
Oh, there's more sign-up sheets in the hall.
Yeah, there's one that's already started.
Okay. You probably shouldn't use this one buried in the corner.
Use that one.
Forget that one. This is the decoy one. That'll be the redundancy backup freestyle workshop sign-up thing. Okay, what else? There's another conference also taking place on this floor, so don't go all the way to the other end of that floor. Instead, prefer to stay towards this room, like on this side of the conference room. I have no idea what the other conference is. What?
It's
L'Oreal? Ooh, that sounds good. Well, go crash their conference. You can leave your bags and stuff if you've checked out already in the same place that we had dinner on the first floor. So you don't even have to go to the bellhop station or whatever. You can use the place that we had dinner yesterday on the first floor. Okay, I think that's all I have to say for announcements. So let me describe, for those of you who don't know, what's the deal with this election system. So as part of the Zcash Foundation's mission, we want to include incorporating ideas of open governments, and this is an organization for you all, for the community, so including community involvement in our decision-making is a key part of what we're trying to do. So to start with that, we've done an experiment of having a high-tech, online, but non-blockchain election, which is a dog fooding process, because we're actually using this to decide aspects of the course of what we do over the next couple of years. And in particular, we're having this election to decide on the 2 board seats that we have open and are aiming to fill. So the way that we had lots of discussions, of course, on whether we should have something like a mining power-based voting system or vote with your coins, like proof of stake voting, but we decided to be pragmatic to do something a little bit more lo-fi than that. And we had the goal of basically selecting a panel that we call the Community Governance Panel of people who have some kind of contribution or involvement in the Zcash community so far and who have some kind of public messaging focus, so that they have a Twitter account or a forum account, something that's associated. And the reason for this is that the way that this election is carried out using the Helios service and the Helios encrypted ballot platform, what you get is a transparent tallying system, but that secret ballot. So let me explain just a little bit what that means. If you're in the community governance panel, then you are asked to vote on all of the issues in the board member candidates. And client side, so in the browser software that you would run, you would generate an encrypted version of your vote, and that encrypted ballot you can publish anywhere on Twitter. It's collected on this website and periodically archived by the Web Archive. So the encrypted ballots everyone can see. If we substituted in a bogus encrypted ballot, then it would be up to the community members to either notice that it disagrees with what they posted on Twitter or that it disagrees with what they saved locally and make a big fuss about it. That's the importance of having some kind of public name for all of the members on the community governance panel. However, the votes are encrypted, so what we get to do is collect up all of the encrypted votes, add them all up, and then only decrypt the final result. So what I'm able to show you today, and in fact this is now publicly visible, if you can find the link to the election site from the governance blog post on the Zcash Foundation site, you'll be able to see and follow along with this. So without further ado, I'll scroll through the outcomes of this ballot, exactly what you'll see online right now. So please scroll a little bit. So first of all, the two new board members that you all have selected are Amber and Ian. Let's have a round of applause for them. Okay. I want to thank everyone else that ran. So we had open nominations, including self-nominations. And so while we're only picking two board members going forward, I want to thank very strongly everyone who nominated themselves and who participated in the discussion about how this election experiment should go and how it can be improved in the future. In case this wasn't clear, this is at least our first time running anything like this. I hope that we're setting a good model for how one can incorporate technology into online elections for cryptocurrency governance ideas without even necessarily trying to bake it into the snark rules of your blockchain. So in addition to the board seats, which is, and I'll also mention that Amber and Ian have been already ratified by a vote of the existing board members, so this is official. It's not just some fake news on a website. Okay, so in addition to the board member election, we also had several resolutions and/or tricky questions that we wanted to pull your all's input on. So let's scroll through those, and I'll tell you a bit about what that question was and how you might interpret what this outcome means. So first of all, we threw up a vote that was a fairly coarsely expressed view on whether or not we should prioritize ASIC resistance and preserving GPU mining as a very immediately adopted priority. I'm personally surprised by this outcome, but this was a fairly strong signal on disagreeing. So my interpretation of this is that we are not going to make any hasty decisions like diverting all of the Zcash Foundation resources to immediately promoting ASIC resistance or picking a fight with the Zcash company to try to demand a very hasty switch to different equihash parameters or prog-pal right now. The next one is that Josh Cincinnati, our executive director, outlined a really interesting vision for how to approach a slightly longer-term view of what to do to change the mining proof of work. Part of his idea is to focus on making a level playing field for hardware manufacturers, so aiming for a future hard fork to a non-ASIC resistance proof of work, but one for which we can spur along open source hardware designs and in communication with a wide range of hardware people, so to try to allow ASICs, but to have a level playing field and enough time for everyone to prepare for that. A lot more detail of his thoughts go into the blog post that you can also get by clicking on the questions of this, even though the link isn't on this outcome page. And that passed with a slightly narrower margin, but you all indicated agreement for that. So my intent is to make this a priority, and we're actually going to commit to try to bring about this vision. All right? The most interesting and tricky question, and also the one that had the most narrow, like very close to 50-50 vote, was a question about whether we should talk about things like changing the monetary supply, or the founder's reward, or the 21 million coins limit. And the narrowly decided vote is that we should not be open to discussing such changes. So my interpretation of that is that it's fairly close, but that will at least not be a priority that we're going to do. All right, scroll more, please. Another one of the interesting, difficult questions to try to get your feedback on is whether or not we should change or clarify our stance towards other cryptocurrencies. So part of our values statement for the Zcash Foundation is not to be Zcash maximalists, but rather to regard other cryptocurrencies as an important part of the overall blockchain and cryptocurrency ecosystem. No coin is an island unto itself and all of that. But the detail of this question is about whether or not we should focus our effort on blockchains that, if they fork Zcash, at least grandfather in some of people's existing value on the Zcash blockchain. All right, and this passed with a fairly strong sense of agreement, so that's helpful for us to narrow our focus. The measure of this that had the largest amount of support in terms of the most agreements was our stance on the Zcash trademark policy. So from the beginning of the Zcash Foundation, one of the ideas is that we could be, as part of what we do and what resources we have, the Zcash company may eventually transfer ownership of its intellectual property, mainly the Zcash name and trademark, over to the Zcash Foundation. We didn't do that right immediately because the Zcash Foundation has been growing very slowly over the last year or so. So I don't think that we were ready to do anything with the trademarks yet. But I interpret this outcome to mean that you all think that we're ready to accept ownership of the Zcash trademark. So we're going to prioritize trying to make sure that happens. And hopefully Zuko will peacefully allow us to receive the trademark, or at least set reasonable expectations of what we have to do to get that. You want to give any sort of indication, like, yes, you strongly agree or disagree?
I think we should come up with a hack where control over the trademark is shared between the company and the foundation in some way, so that if one turns evil, the other one can still use the trademark well.
I like that kind of idea. Well,
Amber says somebody has to legally own it, but they could grant a license.
yeah. Yeah. Very good. Okay, well, that's going to be a priority for us. And finally, the moment you've all been waiting for, the official mascot of the Zcash blockchain and cryptocurrency is the first pluralistic mascot, because it's not one creature but a plurality of creatures, is the Zel, which is the collective noun for multiple zebras, because it's not privacy preserving if it's just one zebra. Okay, so there you go. That's the end of the results of the election. So I want to thank again everyone for who contributed to this process in some way. We've already gotten some feedback on this, but I'm very interested in hearing what you all think about this process. And my hope is that we continue to include this in the Zcash Foundation's governance structure, again, dogfooding for our own decision making, but also this sets a good example and useful data point for governance that cryptocurrencies overall can use. Yes, sure.
How many attendees are at this conference?
Raise your hand if you're on the community governance panel. How many does that feel like? Yeah. Yeah, there were 72 people that were asked to be able to vote and who agreed ahead of time, and about 83% of those actually turned in their ballots before the deadline. Yeah, very interested in discussions about how we should change who gets invited for things like this in the future. We have not made any further plans for what to do after this election. I imagine that this is something that we'll try to do annually, so I think our planning for that will start now. Okay, without further ado, let me get you into our program for this morning. So first up, we're going to have Ian, the newly elected board member of Zcash Foundation, and he's also going to talk about privacy for Zcash in the real world. Okay.
So before I get to that, I just wanted to say to everyone else who ran for the board, I really appreciated a lot of your inputs and thoughts. And since it's an unpaid position anyway,